The Impact of Avatar Clothing on the Proteus Effect and Stereotype Threat by Pauline, Fangyi, and Tabitha Peck. Stereotype threat is demonstrated when stereotyped groups underperform in stereotype salient situations. So, for example, when given a non-stereotype threat situation on working memory, men and women may perform approximately around the same. However, when a threat appears, women will end up underperforming in that threatening situation. This has been demonstrated numerous times, for example, for women in STEM, white men in sports, and racial minorities in academics, as well as many other stereotyped groups. Our prior work has demonstrated that stereotype threat can be induced in a virtual environment, and that stereotype lift is in fact possible with gender body swap illusions. So specifically, we found that women can be buffered from stereotype threat when embodying a male avatar. However, in this work, we really were interested in, can we induce stereotype lift without having to perform gender swaps? So from that, we started considering clothing and the impact that clothing has on people. So for example, when people are wearing suits, they're considered to be professional and successful. When people are wearing more casual clothing, they're considered to be less successful than those wearing suits. The hoodie is often considered to be dangerous and threatening, while lab coats are considered to be a sign of success. In this work, we hypothesized that body ownership in a positive woman avatar, specifically indicated by clothing, will experience stereotype lift in stereotype threatening situations. Specifically, we had people in casual business attire compared to a lab coat science attire. Replicating previous work, we ran a 2x2 experiment, between subjects experiment, where participants were either in a non-threatening situation or a threatening situation, and were either clothed in business attire or STEM attire. To further support the success and to replicate what clothing people were wearing, the images in the room were slightly modified to indicate either business versus STEM. If a stereotype threat was seen, we would see a drop in performance in the threat condition, versus if participants were buffered from stereotype threat, we should see no drop in performance in the threatened situation. The measures that we looked at included the saccade test. So saccade test, or a saccade is a rapid movement of the eyes between a fixation point. This test is broken down into two parts. The prosaccade, which is the easy test, where a fixation cross appears on the screen. A cue appears to one side and participants are instructed to look at the cue. And then an arrow would appear and participants would then indicate on the trackpad the direction that the arrow is currently facing. The anti-saccade, or the hard version of this test, is that again the fixation cross appears, the cue appears to one side, and participants are instructed to not look at the cue and instead inhibit their look to the other side to where the target is and then indicate the target's direction. In this case, you have to inhibit your tendency to look at the cue to look at the arrow instead. This test was interleaved with an end-back test. In this case, a fixation cross appeared, and a target would appear in one of the four quadrants on the screen, followed by another fixation cross and another target. Participants were instructed to indicate if the target appeared in the same location as it did 2 trials before. This was done to increase the cognitive load on the saccade task. The experiment was designed such that participants completed a training session for either the pro or anti-saccade, followed by the end-back test, and then followed by the interleaved saccade and end-back test. Participants then had a short embodiment phase with their avatar, followed by either hearing a threat or a no-threat condition. In this case, in the threat case, participants would hear, the task on which you are about to participate has been shown to produce gender differences. In the no-threat case, they would hear the exact same thing. However, there would be added the word not, as in it has not been shown to produce gender differences. I would also like to point out that in both cases, we do not indicate which gender the difference is happening to and what direction that is happening to. This was then followed by the interleaved Saccade and NBAC tests. Participants then completed the experiment either with the pro or the anti-trials, whichever ones they had not yet done. When considering Saccade latency, we want participants to respond faster. And in this case, when looking at the business condition, you can see that the pro-Saccade trials on the right-hand side are slightly lower than the anti-Saccade trials, not indicating anything of significance, just notice the slope. The same general pattern is happening in the science condition. Now, the solid bars are indicating that this is the no threat condition when participants did not hear the stereotype threat. However, when we're looking at the threatened condition, which will be indicated by dashed lines, we see a different effect between both the business and the science conditions. Specifically, we found a significant drop in performance in that participants were slower on the harder anti-Saccade trials than the pro-Saccade trials in the business condition, indicating stereotype threat. The same was not seen in the science condition. This was replicated when considering the NBAC trials, in that participants were slower in the anti-Saccade trials compared to the pro-Saccade trials in the business condition. When considering Saccade accuracy, overall participants perform really well, where you see that the responses are around 99% accuracy. However, in the science condition, the orange line, you can see that there's an interesting case happening where in the no threat condition on the left, outlined in blue, that there's a drop in performance when there's no threat happening. Interestingly, this same effect was seen in our previous work when we were looking at participants in the male avatars. And so this is a replication of that these pro-stereotyped groups have been shown to underperform when the threat is not salient. And this has been demonstrated before. When considering embodiment within the avatars, we also looked at this, and what we found was that if participants in the science avatar responded significantly faster than participants in the business avatar. Additionally, we found that participants with higher embodiment in their avatar responded faster than participants with lower embodiment. And finally, that there was a condition by embodiment interaction, that the business slope was steeper than the science slope. So in conclusion, we found that the business avatars that we used replicated previous work in showing that there was a drop in performance and that they experienced stereotype threat. However, on a positive note, we found that participants in the STEM avatars did not experience that same drop in performance. Additionally, they replicated the behavior from embodiment in a male avatar in the no threat condition, showing that performance drop when no threat was salient. So in conclusion, the avatar clothing, because the avatar itself was not changed, did impact behavior. And additionally, and a very exciting note, that we found that the STEM avatar was able to buffer women from stereotype threat, so that gender swaps instead would not have to be performed. Thank you.